Today, I am joined by the man, the myth, with a fantastic mustache. His name is Brandon Miller. All right, my name is Randy with Merchandise, where we are going to help you get in the right mindset to mind your own business. Brandon, maybe tell us, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
Well, that's a personal question, my friend.
It is a pretty personal question, but we're not messing around here.
I'm 39, so I'm almost 40, and
Okay.
so.
Okay, and how long have you been doing? How long have you been working for yourself, basically?
I've been working for myself for about 5 years or so, but
Okay.
I've been doing it kind of full time for almost 3.
Okay, good deal, good deal. And maybe dive into like what is the main thing that you do, like working for yourself? What's your main business?
Yeah, so my main business is I run a voiceover business. So I am a voice actor, and so I do that full time. And full time just means that that's my main focus, during the week.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for about 5 years.
Okay. So as I've been thinking about doing this interview and like, what do you ask a voiceover artist? Like, what do you talk about? Like, one thing that kept coming to mind is like, how does somebody get started in this? Because like, do you just like hear yourself on a recording one time and think like, that was pretty saucy, or like, how does somebody get started in like voiceover?
Okay, well, let me go back to listening to yourself and thinking that that's pretty saucy. So when I was a kid, maybe like 13 or 14, it was about the time my like voice changed.
Yep.
And, back then we didn't have social media, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have any of that stuff. It was a boombox and a cassette tape.
Yep.
And I loved recording like the radio and I just the songs, and then I would be the DJ, right?
Oh, okay.
And so I would get into it, be like, this is 96.5, FM, da-da-da-da, and I would do that sort of thing. And I loved doing that, but I never in a million years thought I was going to be a DJ, or even, I didn't even know what a voice actor really was, except for, the things you saw like in Disney movies, right?
Right.
And you're like, wow, whatever these actors do, that's pretty cool, but I never thought about that. But when I got started, it all happened when I was in my teenage years, maybe 17, 18, kind of like senior in high school, that kind of time frame. Well, I was kind of a bad kid, to be honest. And
Okay.
I was a delinquent punk, and I was going down a bad path. And basically, if I didn't change my life, I wouldn't be here today with you. So I got my act together, and during that time period, I discovered theater.
Oh, okay.
Drama class, and I was like, wow. I had all this pent-up energy, and I was class clown. I was always doing impressions. I was this guy, right? That teachers hated because I did that. But I got to use all that energy in the theater.
Okay.
And so I kind of spun it in this positive sense. And so I really got into acting that way, in stage acting. After high school, I wanted to keep doing it, but I didn't really know how I wanted to approach that with college. Also, I didn't even think I could get into college at that time. So I started doing stuff around town. At that time, I lived in Omaha, Nebraska, and I was just kind of going around and auditioning at different places and that sort of thing. And continued that. I did some stuff in the opera a little bit.
Okay.
But I don't consider myself an amazing singer. I just had the opportunity to be in a couple. So after that, I got an agent, and I was doing some indie films. And then around that time, 1920, I kind of felt the pressure from society to be like, you probably should get a real job. You're really not making any money being an actor in Omaha, Nebraska.
Right.
I doubt you could even make a full-time living, even today, being a full-time actor in Omaha, Nebraska, but maybe.
That's not the first place I think about.
Probably
when
not
I
the first
think about,
place.
like an acting career.
So I got a real job. I joined corporate America, and I was in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry for quite a while.
Oh, wow.
And while that was happening, I pretty much just gave up my creative side of wanting to be an actor. All the while, I had employers during that time period say, record our voicemail. You've got a pleasant voice, just do that. Didn't think anything of it, kept doing it. And then eventually I decided, okay, I need to get out of this construction industry and just do something different with my life. Tried to go back to school for botany.
Oh, wow.
Botany, plants, right? I mean, what a strange jump from like the architecture, engineering, construction field to botany. But anyways, as I was going to school, I needed a part-time job. So I got a part-time job at a sports bar. Never bartended before, but I needed some money to get through school.
Right.
And at this time, I was probably in my, 25 or something like that, and a mature student, as it was called back then. So I was working at this bar, and I actually started to like bartending.
Okay.
And then eventually I got into craft beer.
Okay.
Loved that. And all of that, I got into working at some, craft beer bars that are very similar to like Beer Stein, right, in Eugene. And I was managing venues like that, loved it, got some certifications, and basically spent about 12 or 13 years in the craft beer industry, eventually working for breweries and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And all the while that's happening, thinking that I'm not using any of my acting skills that I've always wanted to do. And that's not actually true, because I was a front of house person, right? So I was always in front of customers. I was giving brewery tours. I was always on, right? So that was kind of my way, not knowing at the time that I was engaging in some form of acting. And acting doesn't necessarily mean that you're faking it. It just means that you're performing in a way that's authentic and truthful in the moment. Right. So while that's happening, I helped open Ale Song Brewing and Blending, which is a brewery in Eugene.
Okay.
And back in 2017, while that was happening, I did the voicemail there, of course, because every business wanted me to do it. One of my bosses, and maybe he'll see this or hear this someday, but it was kind of his fault. So he said, "Hey, have you ever considered like voiceover or like the radio stuff or anything?" And I was like, never, not really, but now I'm starting to.
Yeah.
So then I went home and I Googled voiceover classes, Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
Dude, there was one the next week at a community center here in Eugene. And I was like, wow, really? How strange. An intro class just happens to be here right now. So I went to it.
Yeah.
Halfway through the class, I was like, this is it. This is my new career. I'm going to just turn this into a career.
No question about it.
No question about it. I just decided that this was what I was going to do. After that, I, of course, poured money into it, just like any business. I think that one of the misconceptions when it comes to like starting a voiceover business or being a voice actor is that you just need a microphone and the internet and you can do it. It's so much more than that. And just like any business, you have to invest in equipment, right, in order to, make anything happen. So I did that. And fell down a rabbit hole of Google, right? And just was like, how do I find out how to get better? How do I get acting classes and voiceover acting classes? And how do I get the best equipment? Who are the ones that are successful? And that kind of sent the spiral. And as we're sitting here talking about podcasts, that was one thing that really took my voiceover business from just getting into it to I am a business owner. It was a podcast called VOpreneur, and it was all about being an everyday voiceover actor, and it was all about the business side of voiceover, which wasn't really talked about at the time a lot. It was always about performance and funny voices, things like that. And he said on this podcast, the host did, you can be a business owner. And I was like, me? Somebody like me who had a sketchy past and didn't, just all these different things, like really? And that was the day I was driving home from the brewery, and I was like, okay, I'm going to learn everything I can about the business side of voiceover, about being an entrepreneur, about the creative business and all that kind of stuff. I just want to learn that, and that's what happened. And I did that, and I started working part-time and considered it my part-time business. And so before work and after work, that's what I would do. I would work on that business, and it would be direct email marketing. It would be, working on my performance. It would be learning how to edit. It would, all those different things. And, eventually I got to a point where I kind of needed to make a decision. Do I go full-time here, or do I give my mental energy to my full-time job, which was at the brewery? Because truth be told, and my bosses know this, that I wasn't fully present at my full-time job mentally.
Gotcha.
You know, when we're talking mindset,
Yep.
I wasn't fully present for my bosses, and that was a total disservice to them. But it was hard for me because I really wanted to make this voiceover thing full-time, and I wanted it to be a part of be the thing that I did.
Right.
But it was hard to have a mindset of like, I'm this person, but I'm also this person. And it was this constant battle.
Mm-hmm.
So my bosses basically gave me an ultimatum and said,
Oh, wow.
hey, we know you're doing this voiceover thing, and we think it's awesome. We think it's great that you're doing this. We're entrepreneurs ourselves, and we support you. But we need more of you at the business.
Gotcha.
And they said, right now, we need you to make a decision. So it took me a week or two, and eventually came to a decision after talking to my wife, because it was super difficult to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to be like, really? Like a one income household for a little while? That's pretty scary. You know,
Yeah.
and at the time we're building this place, you know, and it's like, what a terrible time for this to happen.
Right.
But that's the other thing too, is that there's never really a right time to do anything like that. So
This is true.
While this happened, I said, okay, I'm going to make the plunge. I can't go along in the brewery with you guys. I need to go do this because I just feel it in my gut that I have to do this. And then I feel like everything is just going to work out somehow. We went to a one income household, and that was super hard. But you know, I had some money saved up from the business, put that away as like a salary for the first year, and
Okay.
just like kind of like was like, okay, now I have more time to send marketing emails, to do auditions, to try to find agents and all this kind of stuff. And that's kind of what happened. And then, you know, the first year wasn't as profitable as I wanted it to be. I lost money that year, and it was a little disheartening. But, you know, at the same time, I was building this place, right? And like I was acquiring, you know, different equipment and stuff. So like it wasn't so out of the ordinary
Right.
that would
Right.
happen. So, and then the second year that rolled up, made some more money. It's good. Broke even. It's pretty good still compared to being several $1,000s, you know,
Right.
in the hole in the
Right.
first year. And then, you know, now we're here in like the third year, right? And now I've made pretty much all the money that I made all of last year already in March. So,
Really?
so that feels good, knowing that I've been down this right path. It's been hard. We've had, you know, certain financial struggles over this time period, you know, and but we've always found ways to work through it, right?
Right.
And I think that's the important thing, is that it's nobody's story pivoting from part-time to full-time ever really hinges on one aspect, right? Knowing I have to make at least $60,000 in order to like do this full-time. Maybe not, you know, maybe the things that people don't know about what I did is that I took a lease out on a car, a brand new car, took a lease out, and I sold it for $15,000 more than what it was worth
Okay.
in the lease. So basically, I got to keep all that money, sold this, got out of the lease, and I had a bunch of extra money. It's great. If I had more interest, I would do that more full time, because that was pretty cool to do that. But I basically sold it in a market that had a higher demand for it.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
that, you know. And I don't even remember what it was, CarMax or something.
Okay.
I'm sure they're like the enemy to car dealerships at this point, but it was great. And that was a way to kind of, okay, now I got an extra chunk of money to
Right.
kind of get me
Right.
by and do that thing. So so that was certainly helpful too. So
Yeah. Yeah. So you're just plugging along. Just it's something that you felt like you had to do. It sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think kept you from starting, like, doing voiceover sooner? Was it, you know, your boss coming to you and saying, "Look, you gotta go all in on the brewery, or you gotta, you know, just go do your own thing"? Was it that, or it sounds like you were doing voiceover for about 2 years before you went full time?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just go full time then? Was it because of like skills or equipment or lack of those things? What kept you from just diving in full time right away?
I would say diving in full time, the reason that I didn't is because, yes, I did not have the skills. Because, I mean, you know, for voiceover, it's all about, you know, acting and performance. And, you know, I was essentially cold off the street,
Right.
you know, like there's no way I was going to just start the business without having a proper, proper training, And
Right.
I mean, I didn't even know how to, use editing software. I mean, I didn't even know how to use social media.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I learned how to use social media in 2019 through courses I took,
Oh, really?
because I didn't know how to use social media.
Gotcha.
So 2019, I mean, I was in my mid 30s at the time, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm an elder millennial. How in the heck do I not know how to use social media? I didn't. So I took courses on it. And that is what really helped me there. But I suppose getting back to the main question, why I didn't jump in, is because there is, and I think this is with all businesses, you have to be prepared still at some level.
Mm-hmm.
For everyone, it's different. How much information do you need before you make a decision? Nobody can answer that except for you.
Right.
For me, the reason that, like, even when I got that ultimatum from the bosses, I would have preferred to stay employed with them
Okay.
because I didn't feel like I was financially ready yet
Okay.
to make that jump. But I could feel it in my gut that it just wasn't right to stay because I knew I couldn't give my 100%
Right.
because I was fully focused on this.
So there was things that you liked about working for somebody else.
Sure. And I think, a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, think, well, the reason I started my own business is because I hate working for the man. Yeah, well, I mean, sure, that's some of it. Yeah, it's nice to be your own boss and that sort of thing. But there is some comfort in working for somebody.
Right.
There's comfort in a regular paycheck.
Yep.
There's a comfort in knowing what you can expect every day. There's comfort to have this cushion. And if you work for some great people like I did, they support you in other ways and help you want to develop you and help you grow and become better in the career that you're in. And so, yeah, I wasn't trying to escape my employer.
Right.
Because I enjoyed the work, but I felt at the time that I had done it for 12, 13, 14 years. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life in that career, in that industry. I didn't want to become a brewer. I maybe wanted to own my own brewery at some point, or craft beer bar, but I didn't want to do some of the tasks that I wasn't great at. Like I'm not the one to make beer. I don't make great beer. Everyone, you heard it. I don't make great beer. But I just didn't know if I wanted to make that plunge. And I was like, maybe I'm just tapped out in the hospitality industry. Maybe I'm just done. That's kind of where I landed with that. And the reason I didn't want to jump in right away is because I was scared for a good reason. I didn't have a proof of concept yet.
Yeah.
And so I would say that the biggest thing is that I didn't know if anybody would hire me.
Yeah.
I didn't even know if I was good. I didn't even know if I had a product worth selling. So when I booked my first job, I was like, whoa, this is real. I got paid real money for this. Okay, I'm going to take notes on how I got that, how this happened, and I'm going to try to do that again. And that's kind of how that ended up happening. And of course, I worked with professional coaches and trainers. I worked with business consultants. I always had this mentality that I need to work with people who are the professionals in their field because they're already doing it. I could try to do it myself. I could do try then fail, keep doing that same thing, which I've done plenty of. But I think the main thing is that if I don't know something, I'm going to go to somebody who knows that.
Right.
And oftentimes they're the experts, and a lot of times they cost money to do that. And I feel like it's worth it to pay for the expertise because I don't want to take the time it takes to get on YouTube and try to figure it out.
Right. How much, if you don't mind me asking, how much do you think that you spent on mentorship on whether that's voiceover stuff or running a business? If you had to a guesstimate.
Yeah. Well, I just did my taxes, so I can tell you.
Okay.
Let's see. So you're saying for coaching, business consulting, that sort of thing.
Do you still get coaching and mentorship?
Always. Yep.
You just are constantly committed to learning.
Absolutely. If I stop coaching, I stop growing, and my business is going to be stagnant. And I'll tell you the reason why is because advertising industry, trends change.
Right.
So if they change, that means that I have to change. And sometimes when you are performing as an actor, you can't see yourself based on some of the trends that are happening out there, because what you want to work with somebody who's already kind of on the firing lines of that sort of thing, and work with those people to get better. So I'm always coaching, and I'm always still getting business advice, and I'm always doing that just because it's super important. But as far as the money goes, I mean, you can look at like a performance coach for voice acting, anywhere from $150 to $300 per hour.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you coach every week. Maybe you coach twice a month. Maybe you do it for 6 months. Maybe you do it for a month. It depends. Business consulting is about the same.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be higher. Sometimes it's like $1,500 for something that you want or need. So I would say, like, any given year, on coaching, on just running the business, I mean, yeah, it could be $15,000 maybe, depending. Sometimes less, sometimes more, but I think it's important to always kind of be polished and like ready and like always knowing what's happening, so you can provide the best for your customers. So
how do you figure out who you're supposed to go to or take advice from? Because I don't know, maybe your Instagram feed is a lot different than mine, but like I'm scrolling through Instagram and it just seems like everybody's a professional and wants to sell me some mentorship and some coaching and stuff like that. How do you figure out who's for real? Or how do you figure out who you are going to go to for advice or coaching?
Well, you've probably seen this one. Are you a video producer and you want to 10x your business? Stay tuned. Right? You've seen that?
Yep.
Okay. Now, I've reached out to those people because I'm curious to the ones that have said literally, do you want to 10x your business as a video producer?
Yeah.
Because I want to know what video producers think about when they think about 10xing their business. What's the thing that they're doing to 10x their business?
Okay.
What
have you found in that?
And it's not rocket science, and a lot of it is just the grind of doing the things that are uncomfortable that you don't want to do anyways.
Right.
They're just putting it in a nice package. So how do you know where to go? Well, there is a lot of BS, man, on social media, and I don't go to those people, mostly. Most of where I get the information from, like performance coaches and stuff, like I'm a part of, I listen to podcasts.
Okay.
That they're on. I am in Facebook groups. I'm in LinkedIn groups. I'm following them on social media to learn kind of who they are. I mean, I stalk them for a while before I really feel like I'm ready to pull the trigger on something like that. I'll also interview them as well,
Okay.
and say, well, like, what success have you had with your students? What success have you, like, I'd like to talk to them, which is fair to do, right?
Do they let you talk to their student?
Yeah.
Really?
And the ones that don't, it's like, okay, then maybe it didn't work out, So I would say when I'm looking for those people, and when I'm looking for even people that are not related to my industry, an example would be like, somebody that is about like managing your finances or whatever. I mean, sometimes it's a book I read, right? And I'm like, man, I love that book, but I just want to dive in a little deeper. I find them, on LinkedIn or something, and see if maybe they're offering a course or something like that, and that's a way that I can kind of vet them, and then see what they're doing, and then jump in and help my business grow.
So, you said something a little bit earlier that I wanted to dive into.
Mm-hmm.
You said that having the conversation with your wife about going to a one-income household.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to focus kind of on that for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
First question I like to ask people, to somebody that's just starting out, starting their own business, taking the plunge,
Mm-hmm.
would you recommend having like a really close relationship, whether that's being engaged or getting married? Would you recommend that right when you're starting a business? Or would you say, put a pause on that, we need to get the business up and rolling before we go further with our relationship? Or would you just say, doesn't matter, just get married and, figure out marriage and business as you are, both of them are a big venture.
Yes, for sure.
Would you recommend starting both at the same time?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So I was supposed to get married in, it was the April. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna name the month because if my wife sees or hears this, she's gonna be like, you forget the date. So, anyways, the first quarter of 2020, right?
Okay.
Pandemic happened
Right.
and that sort of
Yep.
thing. I was already at least a year or so, maybe a little bit more in my business. And so, but at the time it was part-time. I did not feel ready to really quite take it full-time
Okay.
at that point. Though I was at a point where I thought maybe I could, but then the pandemic hit, changed everything, all of that. But we were also getting married, so we had to put that on pause. So we ended up, instead of getting married at the beginning of the year, we got married at the end of the year, so
Okay.
in November of 2020. And still pandemic craziness and all that. But a lot of that stuff was kind of, prepaid at some point,
Okay.
and we weren't at this point ready for me to jump full time quite yet. Even still, we weren't quite ready when I did go full time. But as far as the advice I would give for that, I mean, it's just a conversation you have. Like if you got the money, you could do both.
Right.
I think it's important to have that year salary, to get you by for that first year. I mean, I feel like that is necessary. That way you're not putting so much burden on your partner for everything, right? And I have low expenses, right? I mean, like, I work from home now. I barely drive. Like a half a tank of gas between one car is like what we use per week. My wife works from home as well. So we don't do a lot of driving. And so, we found ways to lower our expenses, which was really great. That was part of it. And then just making sure we didn't have any debt at all. So, that's something you want to get your debt under control first. First and foremost, I think before you even consider marriage and before you even consider starting a business, get your debt under control. Because that could catch up to you very quickly. So I would say the advice is do both if you want. Just look at your finances if it makes sense. As far as making a plunge, you can make a plunge and it could be the wrong thing or the wrong timing. But, just take a look at your situation. Because everyone's situation is different.
Communicate.
Communicate, yeah. I mean, and talk about the fears that you have, like with your partner about failure, about success, about, where you plan to get the money, because they're in on it with you, whether you're married or not.
What about mindset? Because you're running a business, at least for me, like if I don't regulate my line of thinking and all that, like I could just think about my business and like trying to run this thing and I make a mistake and then I just, over supper time, I'm just gone, just thinking about this problem and like how I could solve that and how I could come at it from a different angle. All the while, I have a wife and kids at the supper table and they're not getting any attention from me just because like I'm focusing on my business problem. Like, do you think that could play into it as well? Like, is it healthy to try to, pay attention to your wife and your kids, which you owe that to them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in order to run a successful business, that also takes a lot of mind space, and that also takes a lot of time and problem solving to think about. Like, is it smart to try to juggle those two, or?
I mean, is it smart to juggle those two? I mean, the whole thing with work-life balance, I mean, I would say that I often want to give advice about work-life balance, but am hypocritical at times because I don't take my own advice. I do consider myself somebody who works a little bit more than I should and has trouble with the work-life balance thing. And yes, there are times where I'm thinking about a problem and my wife's like, "Did you hear me?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sorry."
That's a weird way to start a conversation.
Right, exactly. So I would say, it's difficult. I mean, I don't know that many entrepreneurs that have work-life balance down to a science. Now, I mean, there's a lot of gurus out there. There's a lot of, people that we've heard on podcasts or seen on TV or whatever that claim that they've got, mindfulness down, yoga, meditation, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't do it, so I can't tell you if it works or not, but it probably does. But it's hard when your business is also part of your home.
Yeah.
And I don't have like the time to like disconnect, right? As soon as I open this door, I'm in my living room, right? And it's like, I don't have that time to like decompress and be like, take the drive home or whatever. I mean, so it is challenging.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do bring work home, though, funny. But, and yes, has it caused problems in my relationship with my wife? Absolutely. And I think that's the thing that nobody wants to talk about is that it's hard to figure out how to balance those things, and your business can sometimes cause problems in your personal life because you can't find that disconnect. Now, have I had successful moments when I've disconnected? Absolutely. That has to do with, I use this planner that I have up here on my desk, and that works really well to just kind of throw the garbage in my head on that paper, close it, revisit it tomorrow. Will I think about it at night when I'm falling asleep? You bet. But I am trying to stay present with my wife and that sort of thing. So,
good deal.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about going to college. Did you get a degree, or how many years did you go to college?
I went to school for a year and a half.
Okay.
That was it. No degree or anything like that. I initially went to college for radio broadcasting.
Really?
Did that for a very short amount of time because, like, maybe even like 2 semesters or something like that. But I kind of hated it because the guy that I was going to be working with, he was a radio personality, and I just hated him. He was awful. He was so obnoxious. And I was like, well, I don't want to get into this career if I'm going to be that guy. So I decided that I was going to quit, got into the workforce, did all that sort of thing. Didn't go back to college until I was 25, and then got into botany. Loved the kind of science of it. I was really big into the outdoors and loved that kind of stuff. But while I was doing it, I finished my first year, and I was like, okay, well, before I keep going, I want to interview some grad students, and I want to interview some people who have already graduated and are working in that career field. And at the time, this was a specialized form of botany. It was called ethnobotany, which was the scientific study of how human cultures interact with plant species. There was only 2 universities offering it, one in Hawaii and one in Maryland.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to call it the universities and see if I can't talk to, some alumni. While I interviewed some alumni, there was only one person that was actually doing something in that career field. And I was like,
oh, really?
Well, that's annoying. The rest of them were struggling. One of them was doing like field surveying. And I was like, just categorizing plants out in the wild, just, working for the city and that sort of thing. And I was like, man, I don't want to do that. I thought I was going to be this guy that was like the Indiana Jones for plants, the guy who discovers stevia, right? The guy who discovers all these plants that like we get to use in for medicine and food and that sort of thing. So I didn't get a degree, and everything that I use nowadays in my business as a career professional is stuff I learned on the job.
Okay.
Whether it was through an employer, through certifications I've taken. And then, of course, in my voiceover career, everything I've learned is like through one-on-one coaching, through my own study in books, through my own successes and failures, all that kind of stuff.
Do you have any kids?
No kids.
All right. So let's just say that you have, we're going to say, a 13-year-old kid, and they show some tendencies of like being creative, or let's just say some like entrepreneurial tendencies, right? Are you going to recommend to that kid that they go to college, or are you going to say, hold back, maybe get some work experience with an actual company, doing some stuff, being boots on the ground, learning about operations and stuff like that? Or are you going to recommend, hey, actually, college would be a good idea for you?
Boy, that's a tough one, man. I feel like at 13, it is like kid brains, man. They're just not ready.
Right.
They're not ready. And
we are talking like in the future, like when they
in
graduate high
in the
school.
future, right. But I think there's so much developmental stuff that still happens between 13 and 18 when you make the decision to either go to college or not. That there's just so much experimentation. I think one thing that is important to share with a 13-year-old is that here's what's available.
Yeah.
Here's what's out in the world. Here are some things that you could be interested in. We could take something like Shark Tank, for example. That show has had 13-year-olds on there who have created businesses. It's great. That's awesome. I think it's important to, if a kid shows promise in that, talk to them about that kind of stuff. See if they're interested in that, and then help guide them into that space. Whether you are an entrepreneur or not, help them find the mentorship they need to get there.
Right. Do you think you're going to find that in college, or you think you're going to find that more in like working for a business?
As somebody who didn't go through college in entirety, I can't say.
Okay.
But from what I saw, no. I didn't feel like I saw the potential from college that I see in mentorship outside of college.
Gotcha.
That's a tough one. I was like, I can't speak. I haven't really gone through the whole college thing yet.
What was family life like for you?
And I would say that my upbringing wasn't like the most stereotypical, though it had its moments of stereotypical. So when I was born, I feel like I'm about to tell like my origin story or something. But when I was born, I didn't know who my biological father was.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I was about maybe 6 or 7 or something like that, my mom met a great guy.
Okay.
They ended up getting married. He was my stepdad. He eventually adopted me, so I have his same last name, and he's my guardian and all that kind of stuff. And I was, 6 or 7. I didn't know what was happening. The judge was just like, "Do you want this man to be your legal guardian, your father?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Sure." I didn't know, but that was an interesting part of my childhood because I was the man of the house for those first 7 years of my life.
Oh.
And I was raised by my mother and my grandparents during that period of time, and then my dad was in the military, and so we, basically they got married, had my sister. I have one sibling. She's 5-ish years younger than me.
Okay.
And basically we just started moving around the country. So, I mean, I didn't really have I would make friends when I lived in Omaha, and then it was like, boom, we're moving, and we moved to Connecticut. And we were there for like 9 months. I made friends, then we had to leave. So then we moved to Seattle. Made friends, was there for a while, was there for most of my elementary school, and then into about junior high.
Okay.
Well, I guess that's 7th grade. And around 7th grade, and my dad was gone pretty often because he worked on submarines.
Oh, wow.
And so he was off like 9 months out of every year. So I would only see him these like few months, and it was kind of like, he'd come back into my life and try to assert authority. And it's like, well, dude, I'm the one that like has been the man of the house while you've been gone.
Right.
This is my house.
Right.
And that's the kind of attitude I had. And, when he started to become home more often, I reached this 13 or 14-year-old age where I just rebelled. Mm-hmm. I was shoplifting. I was in the principal's office daily. I was being a criminal. And my parents were like, well, my dad wanted to retire and he wanted to get away from the coast. So we moved back to Nebraska, to Omaha, and that was also another way to maybe Brandon will shape up a little bit if we move. Turns out that didn't quite work. I just rebelled even more because I was pissed that I had to leave all my friends and this lifestyle I was creating for myself. And basically, through most of that high school time period, things got a lot worse. I got into criminal activity that was way more serious. I ended up finding myself on house arrest many times.
Wow.
I ended up going to juvie. I was smoking weed all the time, and just having a very bad attitude, hanging out with some very bad people who, at this point in time, are either in jail or dead. So.
Oh, wow.
And my life, my family life, I was pretty disconnected from my mom and my dad and my sister because I was in this rebellious phase. So I felt like I didn't. I was more connected to this culture, this lifestyle of behavior that was, criminal in a lot of ways and bad. But again, when I talked earlier about kind of like where that things shifted, so it became a point where things were just so bad, and I kind of hit this bottom that it was like, okay, I gotta change my life. Mm-hmm. And that's when I found the theater, and that's when I started to go through this slow repair process with my family. Eventually, feel like I had repaired that relationship with my parents. and my sister, and things gradually got better. And now it's just amazing, the way things are now.
Good deal.
So,
Good deal. Did your parents emphasize or like put a lot of importance on working hard? Like, did you have a lot of chores around the house, stuff like that?
yeah, I would say my dad's kind of like military, attitude was in a lot of ways perfectionism.
Okay.
And I adopted that habit, that idea, that value, I guess, although it's a terrible value. But it was something that was important to me as I became an adult, is
Yeah.
that I wanted things to be perfect.
Right.
And that ended up being a handicap for me in my adult life. And so, yes, did I have chores? They were chores, but they were punishments. Because again, I was
Oh.
like, a bad kid. So my punishment was chores. The idea of working hard meant that it was a punishment. Working
Okay.
hard was a punishment. But if you take a look at all of the bad things that I did, I worked really hard at that, and I was good at it, right? So all I'm saying is it depends on where your focus is. You can work hard to make something great, or you can work hard to make something awful. And that was kind of my experience. So when it came to my parents talking to me about wanting to start a business or working hard in a career, they said things like that, but I wasn't ready to hear it.
Right.
So it was something that did not influence me that much until I became an adult, of course.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was with that. Now, when I was still a teenager, in my early 20s, and I wanted to be an actor, my parents supported me. They said, "Oh, that's great," But again, I still, not that I'm blaming them, I still felt this pressure to get a real job. But they supported me in the sense, like my dad was a photographer, and when he wasn't, working for the military, so he actually took my headshots like the first time that I used to submit to auditions and things like that. So yeah, he did support me, But when it came to starting a business, they didn't have that background. Now, my grandfather did have that drive to start a business.
Okay.
Because he started a seat cover center.
Oh.
So he restored old cars and put new seat covers on and that sort of thing. And so he had this
Nice.
business. So I was exposed to that at a young age, but I never really thought about becoming a business owner.
Do you think the perfectionism that your dad kind of passed on to you, do you think that had any effect on you as far as like maybe hesitating to start your own business?
Yeah, it did. It did. I do think, and this is something we talked about, like when do you just pull the trigger to do the thing? When do you jump in? Mm-hmm. Right? When do you roll the dice? Right?
Right.
Well, I held those dice for a while because of that, because I felt everything had to be perfect. Examples would be like when I first started learning how to use social media, I felt like everything had to be perfect, so I never posted anything.
Right.
I felt like when I would share my work out in the world, it had to be perfect or I couldn't share it out in the world. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those things that I would take so much time to make perfect, I wouldn't get enough reward out of it. Here's an example. Like, I know it's talked about a lot in social media marketing and things like that, where you could spend 3 hours working on a piece of content and you get 5 likes on it.
Yep.
And you're like, what in the heck? I poured my life into that for 3 hours. Sometimes the things that we like beat into the ground are the things that don't resonate with people.
Right.
And so that's one thing that I ended up finding out over the years, and something where I've been trying to break that perfectionism habit and just be like, it doesn't have to be, and I'm kind of stealing this quote from somebody who helped me on social media, but it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be present.
That's good.
Right?
That's really good.
Yeah.
I think that you do a great job on social media. In fact, that's how we actually met. I had posted something about taking pictures for food truck, local food truck.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you commented on it, and then we connected. So, like, in my mind, the whole voiceover community, and I could be totally wrong about this, but like, in my mind, like, they're some of the most friendly people that I've met on social media. Mm-hmm. But then I got to thinking about that, and I'm thinking, maybe they just want to connect with me and talk to me because they think I'm going to hand them some work sometime. Do you think that could be it?
Some of it.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, I'm saying that some of that is true.
I'm not throwing any shade at the voiceover community.
No, I'm saying it's not even just the community, but think of it this way: if you're a video producer and you're talking to the North Face on LinkedIn, and you're like, man, I'm going to be super nice to the marketing director here because they might want to hire me.
Exactly.
It goes both ways in every industry. But I think the main thing is that knowing yourself really well is important, because then you can really see authenticity. The better you know yourself, the more you can identify authenticity in other people. And I think that's the important part. So if something smells fishy and you're like, kind of seems like they're a little too nice, maybe it's true, if that's the way you feel about it. But if you feel like it's genuine, then it is genuine.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. And I still haven't been to that food truck yet, but now, as I'm sitting here, kind of hungry, thinking about that, I kind of want to go to that food truck.
From when you started out till now, what do you think is the best change that you've made to the way that you do business? Like the one change, if you could go back 3 years ago to when you were doing it full time, or even when you just got started, if you could go back and just like make one change back there, what do you think that would be?
I wish I was a little more vulnerable back then.
Okay.
Publicly. And I wish that I wouldn't have been so precious with some of the art that I made. I basically wish I would have kind of dove a little deeper into community.
Gotcha.
And instead of feeling like I had to do it all myself. Because the one thing that I've found over my career is that you can't do this by yourself. And you need a team. You need people in your corner. Great things aren't built by themselves.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that I wish I would have understood more back then.
Mm-hmm. Have you been successful?
I mean, some people say I'm successful.
What would you define as success for you?
I would say something that is successful is that I built something with nothing.
Okay.
And I feel successful in that, and that I have done that. And I'm proud to have done something like that. I'm also proud of some of the failures I've had as well, because they've helped spur change and growth and opportunities. So I would say that when you look at your own success, if you don't measure it with anyone else's, you're successful. But when you start comparing it to someone else's, then you have a really hard time to bring yourself back down to a grounded state and really find that gratitude in the people you've helped and the things you've done. But success, I would say I'm successful. I would say you're successful.
Yeah. I think some of that, just going back to one of the previous comments that you made, pouring 5 hours into a post for social media that only gets 3 likes. Part of the success in all of that is you posted, right? You made something, you created something.
Yeah.
If you can see that, if you can see creation as a success, then the whole likes or shares or comments, all that, is fairly irrelevant. I know it's hard to get your mind, to think that way, especially with like social media being all around us and just being such a prevalent part of everyday life. It's hard to see it that way. But like I said before, like being out there and just doing stuff, even if you're making mistakes, that means that you're doing something.
Right.
You had talked a little bit about this, mentioned it in passing. But as of today, do you do anything like exercise, manifest, meditate, anything along those lines? Do you do that on a regular basis?
Well, now I'm feeling guilty. I've used to do all those things. Certainly the first year I had, because I had a little more time on my hands.
Right.
I did a lot of that stuff. Then, I kind of fell into this like funk of just being like busy at work.
Yeah.
And doing things. And so I didn't make time for that. And I haven't made time for that. But now I'm feeling this accountability right now to now do it. So let me break it down a little bit and say that that when I was working out regularly, going to the gym, or even just working out here, I did feel better mentally and I did feel better physically, and those were important to me. It's something I haven't put a lot of time and effort into lately. And I'll say why too. Like, so I got a hernia 8 years ago,
Okay.
which I still have, and that I got it during this bodybuilding thing I was doing, and I just got messed up mentally because I was like, I feel broken. I feel like I can't do this. I would try to go back to the gym like a year or two, and then I'd quit, and then I'd do it a year or two, and then quit. And I'm kind of in that stage right now where I'm kind of quit, but I kind of want to get back into it. I want to get past this like mental block and this physical like challenge that I have. So I would say that yes, when I was doing those things, I felt really good mentally. Now I'm not doing it, but now I'm feeling the pressure to do it. So now I'm going to be looking back into it.
That's not why I asked the question. I'm just
I know. But so meditation. Now I don't really do any sort of meditation or manifesting in a traditional sense.
okay.
When I'm auditioning or when I'm working on a project and I'm trying to get in the right headspace to like connect authentically with a story, I do that.
Okay.
I'll sit there and I will find ways that I can authentically connect to a story through manifesting, through meditation, through ways to like find the emotion within me to make that happen.
Yeah.
So I will do that. But when it comes to like reaching my goals and that sort of thing, I write them down.
Okay.
I reference them. I refer back to them. Every year I take a trip at the end of the year, kind of like my employee holiday party of one. And I review all of the goals that I wrote down the previous year during that planning period. And I say, well, did I reach it or not? And if not, why not? Like, what were the things that held me back? How can I do that this year so I can reach those goals? What things did go well? What did I do? How did it get me there? Who helped me? And I have this, and I basically take 2 days to do this.
Okay.
Last year, I went to the coast, got a beachside little house, and just like did this whole solo thing. And it was very helpful and eye-opening to know that I reached some of the goals that I put on my goal list the previous year. And and so, yeah, I look at those things. I keep them forefront. You know, one of the other things, too, is that I have a mastermind group that I'm a part of.
Okay.
And I have been a part of for about almost 3 years now. And I feel like that was a game changer in helping me to get over some of the major hurdles as a business owner. My mastermind is comprised of, there's 7 of us. We're all voice actors all over the world.
Oh, wow.
And we came together, and we're all in different kind of walks of life, but we're all roughly in the same kind of like, you know, somebody's a few steps ahead, a few steps behind, that sort of thing. And we get together and we help each other achieve our goals. So what can I do to help you? That kind of thing. And that was a big game changer. And that's a way that I help to stay accountable on certain things that I work on. And of course I have a support network if I am having trouble, you know, trying to figure out something. So I would say that's something that's huge for me.
Have you ever felt like an imposter?
Oh, yes. Everybody, I feel like everybody that has ever reached any amount of success in their life feels that.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
How do you overcome that?
Well, here's an example. So, like, I'm headed to New York next week to go speak at the New York Film Academy.
Really?
Right? And I feel like an imposter going to do that. Like, that seems a bit crazy to me.
You're not just recording their voicemail?
I'm not, no, but if they want that, maybe I'll pitch it. I'll find a way to pitch it. But like doing that makes me feel like an imposter.
Yeah.
But here's something that I do in my planner. Every week I have this section in my planner. What are my weekly wins? I write them down every week.
Oh, wow.
And anytime that I feel like I'm not worthy of something, I just look back in that planner and I can see, wow, I made all those things happen.
I'm a winner.
I'm not an imposter. I'm a guy that deserves to be here at the table. And so that's one way that I end up doing that. Other ways that I've been able to kind of get past that is I say, you know, an example would be like sometimes when you have an imposter syndrome, it prevents you from taking action.
Right.
Right. I instead don't think about me doing the task. You know, here's an example. Let's say I'm feel like an imposter. Like, how could I possibly reach out to this video producer that I really want to work with, right? Like, how could I do that? They're making these incredible commercials for Columbia Sportswear. Like, I mean, like, that's crazy, you know? I don't feel worthy to reach out to those people. And it's like, okay, I won't. right? I won't be the one doing this for me. I'm going to do this for me in the future. I'm going to do it for future me because that person's actually my boss. Me tomorrow, me in 6 months, me in a year, me in 2 years, that's my boss. And that dude is going to be so freaking proud of me for doing that, for reaching
Yeah.
out and doing that hard thing because he was doing it for me, not himself. And I've tested that theory where I've scheduled an email to go out to my future self to say, hey, I did this thing. I reached out to that person. I did this one task. I, went to this workshop and I did that. And then when I get that email as future me, I can say, that actually made our life better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's also like your, chalking up your day or your weekly wins. That's another win that you can put into your win column there.
Yeah.
That's great. What do you think maybe your biggest misconception or maybe just society in general? What's the biggest misconception about being an entrepreneur and, taking the plunge, either starting or buying your own business?
One is that the misconception is when we look at overnight successes, they usually have taken 10 years or so to get there. If I look at that in my life, when I was in the craft beer industry, I a decade or plus I was in that industry, I was a success at 10 years.
Yeah.
And it took me 10 years to get there, to do that sort of thing. And so I know for a fact that it takes that long. And I think it just takes a while to get there. And having patience and persistence, those are the two qualities that I think you have to have as an entrepreneur, especially when you're starting out, and especially when you start to reach a plateau or you start to reach a moment where it's like, things are stagnant, the business is drying up, I don't know what's wrong with my business. Patience and persistence. You just got to keep chipping away at it, keep doing the thing, but be patient, it'll eventually happen. Those are probably the two things that have been true in my life.
What percentage of the population do you think could be entrepreneurs? Like actually have the right mindset, have the work ethic, have what it takes to start their voiceover business, start a coffee shop,
Yeah.
do something like that?
Boy, I'll tell you, the percentage is going to be tough to nail down, but even if it's just general, but because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that shouldn't be entrepreneurs.
Okay, maybe explain that a little bit.
I mean, not. I don't think everybody is really meant to have that because it takes a lot of different things, and we touched on them. The mindset, huge. If you don't have the mindset, it's very hard to keep growing. And being an entrepreneur is a people business. And if you're not able to conduct yourself in a way that is receptive to people, you're going to have it. It's going to be very challenging to keep going. There are some people that keep going as entrepreneurs, but they're not happy, right? They're not happy with their life. They're not happy with what they're doing. They just feel pressured to keep doing it because they don't want to be considered a failure if they stop being an entrepreneur and go work for somebody else or change up their business altogether. I feel like there's a lot of that, but at the same time, there are a lot of people that have potential. Like even when I used to hire employees, I could look at somebody that I hired and be like, dude, they would make a perfect manager. Or they could start their own brewery. I could just see it.
Yeah.
And over the years, they've done stuff like that. And I'm like, see, I told they had the potential to do it. So I think the thing about it is that the percentage, I can't tell you, 50-50 maybe. I mean, you would look at social media, TikTok or something like that, where there are so many videos saying that you could become a digital marketer, you could become a Amazon affiliate person, you can do all these different things and everybody can do it. That's a common misconception, is that everybody can do it, because it's not true. It's just like, not everybody's meant to be an employee. Not everybody's meant to be something.
Right.
I always thought I was going to be an employee.
Really?
In my life. I never had felt that I was somebody that could ever own a business. So it wasn't until I kind of got this permission in this podcast I was listening to that said, you can be a business owner. You got to treat this as a business. And that was kind of the game changer for me.
When we talked on the phone, talked about coming over here doing this interview, you said you had a few other things that you do besides voiceover. One of them was like a YouTube channel. You run a YouTube channel?
Right, yes.
What's that called?
Yes, so that is called Cut the Mustard.
Cut the Mustard?
Yes, it is a show that is all about the world's most beloved condiments.
Okay.
Their history, their ingredients, and some of the inventors of those those condiments.
Okay.
Right? That is, I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. So we talk about ketchup, we talk about mustard, we talk about mayonnaise, we talk about all those things. But we, the reason that I chose that category was because I always wanted a YouTube channel, and I was like,
Okay.
well, and in my voiceover career, there's a style of voiceover narration that I enjoy doing, which is in-show narration. So it's
Okay.
stuff that you hear on PBS and documentaries. It's stuff you hear on the Discovery Channel, History Channel, stuff you even see on YouTube and that sort of thing, where
Yeah.
you're basically like the show host or the narrator, right? And I wanted to basically create opportunities for myself in that category. And I was like, well, while I'm working at doing that by reaching out to talent agencies and unscripted development producers and things like that to get into that industry, which is hard to get into, I'm going to create this opportunity on the side.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I really love the outdoors, so maybe I'll do like gear reviews, or maybe I'll do different hikes that I like or something like that, and I'll just do the narration for it. And then I thought, okay, well, I love doing those things, and I don't want to get burnt out by turning that into a job, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to do that. So then I thought, what's something that I could never run out of ideas? So I wrote down I wrote down a handful of things, and then I was like, condiments, how weird is that? And I was like, I wonder if I can come up with 50 episodes. So I came up with 50 episodes. Just wrote down, like, what could they be? Ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and I was like, whoa. And then I could take all that, and I could go into specific brands, and then I could go into that, and it was just like this rabbit hole where I was like, I'll never run out of ideas.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this condiment thing. And all the while I had that idea, I was like, I wonder if anybody else is doing that. So then, you familiar with Thrillist?
No.
Thrillist is like a Gen Z millennial digital publication and YouTube channel and that sort of thing, where it's all about lifestyle and travel and food and all this kind of stuff. Well, they had a channel that was devoted to kind of these unique lifestyle things. Some of them were about condiments, some of them were about different foods, some of them were about travel and things like that. And I was like, okay, so I looked and I was like, oh wow, they're kind of doing kind of the idea that I have. Mm-hmm. Although I would do it a little different.
Right.
So then I decided, and I noticed they hadn't produced in 2 years. I was like, they haven't produced in 2 years, interesting. So then I decided to find the executive producer of it on LinkedIn. I reached out to him and I said, hey, I saw that you guys have this this channel. You guys haven't produced in 2 years. Is that something you guys are trying to kickstart? And he's like, oh, thanks for reaching out, man. But, we had to disband it. COVID was like really hard for us. And they just got rid of the whole video production department. So I'm currently looking for new employment. And I was like, oh, well, if there's anything I can do or anything I see, I'll let you know. I'm happy to, share resources and that sort of thing. So then that kind of gave me this little green light of like, well, maybe I'm going to go off now and create my own channel for this. So then I did. I started, and I had an issue with perfectionism to some degree. And then at one point, I was like, screw it. I'm just going to put out the first episode and see what happens. First episode, I think, was about mustard. Makes sense, called Cut the Mustard. But, and then as I did that, I think I got better each episode. I wrote the scripts. I did all the video. The video was basically B-roll and animation and things like that.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't on camera. Not yet. And I did all the editing and all that kind of stuff and posted it on YouTube and just kind of let things go organically. And I said, I'll just produce an episode every week. While that happened, I had a handful under my belt, maybe 20 or 30 episodes or something like that. And I got in touch with a network who was interested in picking up the show.
What?
And I was like, really? That's bizarre. I feel like I just started and there's already traction and this network is interested in possibly even picking the show up. So I had several meetings, six or so meetings with them, and we're kind of still in discussions to some degree, which is actually part of the reason that I'm headed to New York. I'm on this panel about digital media and how you can create your own opportunities outside of TV, broadcast, and things like that. Yeah. So after I realized, wow, I can make an opportunity that a broadcast network would be interested in, I was like, well, maybe I could just reach out to brands and start getting brand sponsorships. So that's kind of my next venture right now is to work on brand sponsorships with the different brands I want to feature. And one of the caveats of this broadcast network is they really encouraged me to go on camera because that's how a lot of their network stuff is. It's on camera. So I was like, okay, well, I I have connections. I'll find a way to make that happen. I can put a green screen in here. We have room, right?
Right.
We have lights. We can make it happen. So that's kind of where I'm in. I'm in this transition period where I'm about to make that jump to this on-camera thing.
Nice.
So this has turned into a part-time job to some degree.
Cut the mustard.
Cut the mustard has.
Okay.
Now it never takes over from my voiceover job. That's my
Right.
number one full-time job. This is just a part-time thing I'm doing. So that would be one endeavor that I have.
But isn't that what you said about the voiceover job?
Well, yeah, I mean, but again, I set out initially to make it full-time. So
Yeah.
I did that. But yes, the cut the mustard thing is definitely something that is coming along.
I think that's a very, very valuable piece of information right there, because I don't know if you know this or not. I worked in education for a school year. And I told the students there, I said, I don't care what you like to do, your hobbies, pick one. I said, become very, very good at it and start to make videos about it.
Yeah.
And I said, somewhere, somehow, through all of that process, if you stick with it, you're going to be able to make money with basically one of your hobbies. There's people out there that will watch your content. There's people that will see how passionate you are about it and will, follow along. And I just really, really like the fact that you're like, you know what? I don't really have the opportunities that I want, or all the opportunities that I want right now. I'm just going to go make my own. And so I love that. And here it's taken off for you. So that's great. And you also produce a podcast, right?
Well, yes. So,
or you're the talent. Are you the producer as well?
All of it. But yes, I would say that maybe it's like an entrepreneurial bug where you just can't stop creating things.
Okay.
And I think that's one thing that I've noticed over my lifetime as a human being, is that I'm really good at starting a bunch of things.
Okay.
And then wanting to like hand it off and
Right.
saying like, okay, I got it all good. I've got it started for you. And this is back even when I worked for new bars and restaurants and things like that. I was like, I'm great at starting the business, man. I'm great at like getting it up and running, manage it and do the thing. But then it's like, all right, my work here is done. Enjoy.
Right.
And then move on to something else. Now that hasn't been true for me in my voiceover business because I don't treat it that way.
Right.
But certainly the cut the mustard thing, maybe that turns into something that I hand off. And it becomes something else with a new host. Who knows? With the podcast that I co-host, yes, my co-host and I, we produce it. So we do the video, we do the audio, and it is called the Eugene Morning Hustle Podcast, and it is for the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, and it aligns with all the values that they hold true, which is working with small businesses, supporting employees, supporting our community. And so we bring on guests in the community who are making positive change, and we share that story as well as sharing professional and personal development tips. We share about the events that are local, that it's hard to find out about events in your community if you're not already plugged in.
Right.
So that was one reason we wanted to start it, to be like, for people that don't know where to look, the podcast will be that resource. So yes, we do all of the stuff. My co-host handles most of the video. I do the audio, and that's,
Do you know how to do audio?
yeah. Well, yeah, it was a funny partnership where he's a video producer, and I do voiceover productions, and it's like, well, that works out pretty well.
Yeah,
So
that is good.
so that was
I've heard from people, if you're going to start a business, especially if you're going to start like a business in partnership with somebody else, make sure that you don't do like exactly the same jobs.
right.
And that sounds like a great combination there. I'll link all of your websites in the show notes, so people can check you out if people want to work with you or just see what you're doing. So that would be your voiceover business, Cut the Mustard, and then your podcast. Is there anything else that you do that you'd like to shout out?
No, that should be it.
Okay.
I hope that's it. I mean, that's all I can handle at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that is all the questions that I have. Is there anything else that you just want to say to the audience?
I suppose when it comes to mindset, I mean, just know that you can do it. I mean, that's the main thing, and seek out the people who are already doing it. One of the things that I think people think of is when they want a mentor, and they're like, well, that mentor works for a giant like corporation. Like, I'll never even be able to get to the opportunity to be in front of them. Well, chances are they've already created a podcast,
Yep.
or they've been a guest, or they've made, written books, or there's information about them. And as long as you consume that content and take some of the action from it,
Yep.
that is very similar to having a mentor.
Yeah.
And then, of course, at the same time, you can certainly get in front of those people. They're just people.
They are just people.
It's just hard.
Yep.
And hard things are worth it.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. It's great to talk to you, Brandon. Great to see you again. And best of luck in all of your ventures.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you like what you've seen, please leave us a like. Please subscribe to our channel. And we'd love to hear what you're thinking, so leave a comment down below.